Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the East to West Hunts podcast. Today, I got a really exciting guest on. I got Lindsay Persico from Alone, which I guess that's where I know you from, but also because you got some pretty cool content and some cool master classes out as well. So I figured this is like a match made in heaven to talk about what you got for backcountry hunting here. But Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I was very excited because I think of you as a badass, in my opinion. But but at the same point, I think a cool thing that you've really been bringing to light is fitness and nutrition, really kind of towards the backcountry. But before that, I actually want to ask you some stuff about Alone, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I watched Alone quite a few seasons, and then you were on Alone the Beast. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were you on any other seasons?
Nope, just that one.
Okay. That one is so different than all the other ones. That's why I ask you.
Yeah, it's a spin-off of the original, which threw people because they'd never done a spin-off. They've kind of switched the format for the main show a few times where they would do like whoever lasts longest, or it was like 100-day challenge. They've done that, but this was completely different.
Yeah. When I first saw the Beast, I literally thought it was like a champions challenge.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So when I saw you on there, I was like, she had to have won like another season. So I'm like going back and I'm like, I've seen every other season. I don't think I missed her, but maybe I did.
Yeah. No, it's just a random spin-off they did, and they haven't redone it, but it was kind of a unique one. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, for viewers and listeners, if you're not familiar with it, you should definitely check out that season. But it was interesting because you guys were like dropped out there and literally you had nothing besides a carcass of a moose, which was like wild because I'm like I mean, they're really set up for you were set up for failure and you were the only one to make it, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was a unique one. It was cool that we had no tools. We couldn't use anything from our clothing even. We had very specific clothing we had to bring, and you couldn't use anything off it. You couldn't use your shoelace to make a bow drill. Everything that you used as a tool had to be made from nature, which was kind of neat.
Yeah, so see, like as a viewer, you would never know that per se, but that was going to be one of my questions. Like, did you get teed up on anything, or did you have any like things you couldn't do? So, sounds like that was one of them. Were there any other things that you just like can't do?
Well, you couldn't even if you found something in nature, but it wasn't of nature. So
Mm,
the lone folks will be able to find like nets or things washed up along the shore, and they can use them. And we weren't allowed to use anything like that because there was some cool stuff out there that would have been handy.
yeah, man. Okay, yeah, that's a huge challenge. Yeah, and then you were at what day were you just alone by yourself? At what point?
Wait.
Yeah. Okay. It seemed pretty early, and I was like, man, like it looked pretty challenging, and the whole grizzly bear thing was kind of tough.
Yeah, it was a black bear. He was just a big
It
black.
was okay.
He was a big black bear, and he wanted my moose, which I can't blame him. But he got a little too comfortable
Uh,
with me.
I thought for sure it was a grizzly, but you never really got a good glimpse of him besides that night. I guess in regards to some of the things that you're doing now post alone, was a lot of that like an opportunity to be like, okay, I can definitely be a benefit to folks of like teaching people a
No,
lot of this outdoor stuff, or no?
no, I really didn't. Honestly, it was interesting because I never wanted to be on reality TV. It was not a goal of mine. Wasn't even an interest of mine. But I had a friend who had ended up in the base camp for people who were potentially going to be on Alone, and they asked her for recommendations for people that they could look at as possible Alone participants. And she gave them my name, and then when they reached out to me, I thought it was a scam because it came as an Instagram message. I'm like, oh, this is a scam, and I ignored it. And then I said something to her about it. And she's like, oh no, that's the casting director. You should reach out to them. And so I was like, okay. So I started talking to this gal, and she was like wanting me to do this was the year that they did the 100-day Alone. So you had
Okay.
at least you knew you were going to be there 100 days at bare minimum if you were going to stay, which to me the whole point of going is to stay. So I'm like, I'll be there 100 days. And I told him I had little kids, like there just wasn't a way for me to be gone for 100 days from my kids. It was not feasible. And so she said, well, we're doing this spinoff show and it's only 30 days. Could you do 30 days? And I honestly didn't really want to do it because I've spent a lot of time in the woods. I know what it's like being out there, and I knew it wasn't going to be fun. But my mentor growing up told me you have to do the things in life that you would regret not doing. And I looked at the situation and I thought, someday down the road, would I regret it if I don't try?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, yeah, there's a high possibility that I would look back on it and wish I would have done it. So I decided to go for it.
It's
And
awesome.
I had no like thoughts of what would happen afterwards. I just knew like this is something I want to do and I'm not going to go and quit. I'm just going to go do it. And when I got done, I had no idea how much it was actually going to change my life, because it literally did change the whole trajectory of what I do. It ended up being the reason I got hired for teaching health and fitness with Tana Grenda through Bristol Bay Fitness.
Okay.
It wasn't long after the show aired, she put out something on Instagram that she was hiring an assistant coach. And I thought, wow, this would be kind of cool. I used to run a fitness business on my own, but I hated the business side of it. I loved coaching, but not the business. I thought this would be great. She can do the business, I can coach. This would be a cool setup. So I applied, and the reason that she even took a double look at my application was because she saw that I was on alone. And she was
Mm.
like, this gal looks interesting. And so she watched my show, and then she's like, I have to hire her. So
Yeah.
started working for her because of the show, and then our stuff started branching out into all the things that I do. Teaching at retreats, going to Alaska and Ontario came out of that, and teaching in Idaho, and all the stuff that I love doing and look forward to every year was tied to the fact that I did that show. So I didn't see it before I started it, but it did end up changing my life.
That's pretty awesome. So I was gonna ask you kind of to that same realm. So like your life before Alone, obviously, like you obviously were hunting and doing all these other things way before that, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up
Okay.
hunting. My dad took me out when I was a little girl, and I was blessed. I had an older brother, and he could have just taken my older brother, but he didn't. He took me too because he saw I was interested and fell in love with it. He taught me a lot, and then that just continued to grow as I got older. It was always something I loved doing and tried to spend as much time doing as I possibly could. So I had a background in that. And I had started a blog. I had social media only because I had started a blog when my son was born, and I was sitting around a lot taking care of a little baby. And, your heart's always in the woods, even if
Yeah.
you're. And so I started writing about stories, hunting stories, just wild game recipes. And I was like, I'm just going to put this all in a blog. It was back when people were blogging a lot more often. And then I realized, like, well, if I want anybody to get access to this, I have to share it somewhere. So I need social
Mm.
media to do that. So then I started social media, and that was kind of all I did. I taught my kids how to hunt. We were a hunting family. We did everything we could outdoors, and I wrote about it on my blog. But aside from that, I really didn't have much in the outdoor industry going on before I went on Alone.
What about the survival skills though? I feel like you have to have a lot of that in some capacity.
It all came out of hunting. So it was interesting watching as they brought people on that show. They brought all kinds of people. You'd have people with a background in bushcraft, like that is what they did. And I know that from talking to producers, they tried to bring people that had kind of different skill sets on the show. They tried to bring back more of the like hunting associated people because they had a dead animal involved in this show. They wanted somebody with some skills in butchering and quartering an animal and dealing with meat and those types of things. And then they tried to bring people in that had more of the bushcrafting background and that. But I had some very basics in that stuff anyway, just because when you're out in the mountains, you kind of need to know how to survive out there if something goes wrong and you end up
Hmm.
spend the night. So my dad had taught me a lot of stuff like that. I had taught my kids things like that. Fire starting, resources, how to stay warm and dry, and dealing with being out in the elements. And I just took that and my unwillingness to quit and my hunting experience and went in and did pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, you did very well. You did very well. It was impressive. All right, well, so that's pretty cool. So you evolve into, uh, now to your point, you have launched all this other stuff. Where does kind of the fitness and nutrition trajectory kind of go? With the work and all that, and then obviously now with what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I did. So I got into fitness and nutrition Because I had a family background of illness. My family had had some pretty severe illnesses when I was a child. There was quite a bit of that going on in my family, and so even from a young age, I got really interested in health.
Mm,
And and then on top of that, I loved being out in the woods and hunting. I live in the West. It's not an easy pursuit out there. So being fit was always helpful for me and being able to go out and do what I wanted to do. So those two things kind of tied together. And I started coaching after I had reversed my autoimmune disease. I ended up with Hashimoto's
mm.
thyroiditis.
Yeah,
And
my wife's got that. Very, very familiar.
yes, it's a real thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I went to the doctor, got diagnosed with it, and they basically told me there wasn't anything they could do for me. They said eventually, like, I couldn't even do anything to really change it. They just said eventually it'll get bad enough and we'll put you on medication. And, if it continues to worsen, then eventually you may have to have your thyroid removed and you'll be solely on medication. And I thought, there's got to be more to
Hmm.
than that. Like, so I started doing a lot of research into autoimmune disease, specifically Hashimoto's. I joined some summits where people who are experts on that were teaching. And I found out that there's actually a lot that I could do to help with autoimmune disease. A lot of it stems from inflammation. Your gut health is a big part of that. Stress is a huge factor. So I ended up changing my lifestyle a ton, working through a lot of stress, just changing the way that I ate, taking better care of my whole digestive system. And I reversed it completely.
Mm,
And I've been pretty much symptom free. I just had lab work done last month and it came back. Everything is right where it should be.
it's awesome.
People watched me do that and they were really interested in, how I did that. And so I ended up getting a certification from NASM as not only a fitness coach, but with a specialization in nutrition. And
Hmm.
I started coaching on my own, but like I said, I hated business. I don't like business, not my thing. Um, so I quit doing that right before I went on alone because I couldn't do it while I was on alone
Sure.
and I was not enjoying the business aspect of it. So I closed down my business before I went on the show. And then when Tana started hiring, I was like, this gal loves hunting. We're like two peas in a pod. We'd be a great pair. I'd love coaching for her. So I did that for couple years, 3 years, and we focused a lot. We coached all sorts of people. I did work with a lot of autoimmune people because that was one of the things I'm specialized in. But a lot of the stuff we did was also focused on prepping people for hunts. Hunting in Alaska, maybe you're going on a moose hunt and you have to carry a really heavy pack, 150-pound packs to get those moose out of there. You're walking on tundra. Like, it's hard
Hmm.
for people if they're not prepared. So we had programs to help people with that. We would work with people who drew sheep tags and they were headed out on a hard sheep hunt or goat hunt. And I've loved doing that. It's been great. I coached for quite a while with her. We also foster and have adopted some kiddos. So I have three biological kiddos, one adopted kiddo, and we just had a 2-year-old foster placement. So we've got 5 kids. I have other business things going on and I'm super busy. So I hadn't been coaching for a while. I've been
Mm.
focusing on retreats and teaching survival skills. I teach wilderness first aid. I'm teaching self defense classes, a number of different things, wild game cooking and hunt prep at
Wow.
different retreats every summer. So I put kind of coaching on the back burner, but it's still been just a passion of mine and something I want to help people with. It's just I have a limited amount of time in my day.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I figured you had a ton of stuff going on, and I only could see surface level things. So unless I'm like, really in tune, get to know you kind of a thing, but that's pretty sweet. So with these backcountry hunters, were you guys like advertising this, or was it more of like people naturally just coming in and that's what they were training for?
There was both. There was word of mouth. Like we trained hunters and they had a really good experience and they would tell somebody like they knew a buddy or an outfitter might know somebody that got a sheep tag and he's like, "Hey, you should reach out to these guys because they help people prep for this stuff." But we also did advertise it usually in the early part of the spring when people were putting in for tags. We'd put it out there like, "Hey, if you draw a tag, you need a good 6 months depending upon your starting point, but if you have some ways to go, you need to put time in. It takes
Yeah.
time to really see results from something like that." So we would advertise early in the year. And when people found out they drew a tag, a lot of times we'd have people reach out and be like, "Hey, I drew this tag. What can we do?" And so we'd get them started and get them ready.
So Cliff's Notes version of it, what would you say is like the style of training that you would do? And like, was there any kind of like periodization to it or any of that nature?
Yeah, there is. We do a kind of a three-part approach to all of our training. It's health and fitness related, but it's also lifestyle. So we deal
Okay.
with nutrition. Nutrition is a big part of prep. It's a big part of the actual hunt itself. It's a big part of post-hunt for, getting healed back up and getting back into your normal life. So we do, the lifestyle part of it is sleep, stress, water intake. All of those things are crucial, not only in your day to day, but then also within your program and out in the field. And we do the actual workout part of it. And the workout parts are focused at different phases. So in the beginning, you're going to work a lot with people on stabilization. Stabilization is your foundation. And if you're trying to build big muscle groups and you're trying to build strength, but your stabilizers are not ready for that, then you're going to end up with injuries. So we focus on stabilization. We start building up cardiovascular fitness. And then we move more into a strength phase. We move into endurance. And then before the hunt, you actually kind of deload. You take a little bit of a load off, let everything fully heal, make sure you're super strong, you've got good nutrition in place, and then you head out on your hunt 100%.
Hmm. Okay. I like it. And you said that's about 6 months you typically would
A lot
do?
of times, yeah, we try to get people in at about 6 month mark to really be able to do it properly. 6 months is a good time frame. We would also do a shorter version at about 3 months, but you're not going to get as much benefit unless you do the time it takes. It just takes time. It takes
Yeah,
time to build. You got to build those stabilizers, and then you're building your large muscle moving groups, your glutes, making sure that your glutes are firing for hiking, making sure that you're taking care of your joints and all that in the process, and not just hitting it really hard, getting yourself worn out, and then trying to hike mountains
go run a marathon that you never trained for.
for days on end.
Totally. Totally. I was listening to David Goggins' book on Audible, and it's at a part where he goes and tries to run an ultra, but he has never trained for an ultra. And you listen to it, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is such a hot disaster."
And like you can, I mean, anybody can run their body into the ground, but
Totally,
if that's your goal, have at her. But if your goal is to be able to succeed in this hunt and do well and then go back home and be a functioning member of your family and then, be able to go back another year and a year after that and a year after that and not just have your body all torn up, then there's better ways to go about it.
for sure. Well, one of the things that intrigued me about talking to you in particular about this was the nutrition component, actually, because I think fitness is the it's like the more appealing, I call it the sexier version of things. Nobody wants to talk about nutrition,
Nope.
but nutrition's way more valuable in my opinion, especially when you're bonking on the mountain. So I guess for the nutrition part, like how did you actually put something together for something like this? How where did you start?
Well, a lot of it with nutrition, it starts with first helping people understand what they need because a lot of people don't even know what their body needs, how many calories they need for what their goals are. Because if you're trying to build muscle and you're under eating, you're not going to build muscle. And if you're trying to have, steady energy and endurance and you're not eating enough food, you're going to get tired. Your muscles aren't going to have the fuel they need to perform. Most people that are worried about fitness, they're trying to get healthier are under eating. They're not eating enough food because
Valid.
a lot of times we hear, you got to do this fast or you need to do this 1200 calorie diet or whatever. And so a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I want to get healthier, I want to lose weight," they're under eating. And under eating is only going to slow your metabolism down in the long run and you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you know how much to eat and what kinds of things to eat, you can actually have good energy, you can feel satiated, your body can function optimally and you can still achieve those results that you want. You can lose weight and you can build muscle. So the biggest starting point for people is just teaching them what their body actually needs.
So do you do like metabolic testing? Like how do you evaluate somebody's like basal metabolic rate and all that?
We do basic, just a checklist. We go through age, gender, activity level. So we'll calculate BMI first, and then we'll calculate TDEE, and that's going to change based off what training phases they're in. Their nutritional intake and needs will change based off of the training phases that they're in and the goals that we're working through. But we do come up with that for them. And if I'm working with a client that's trying to lose weight, we will be operating at a totally different nutrition level than we would with somebody who's trying to build muscle for a sheep hunt. It's just going to look very individualized and different for everybody.
Yeah, I mean that's huge right there. Do you follow the same phase for like training to start and then the nutritional cycle?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're
Like
asking.
let's say because you mentioned endurance, right? So you're going to start with endurance training, so on and so forth. Prepare the body for more. In that phase of training, are you doing something in particular like higher carbohydrates or more focus on protein? Like what is that looking like?
A lot of it is focused on protein. We do increase carbohydrates periodically, but a lot of times your increased carbohydrates is going to come during the hunt itself when you are really trying to fuel those muscles and you are burning through just intense amounts of carbohydrates. So your actual in hunt nutrition is going to look totally different than your prep nutrition. You're going to be going through a lot more calories. You're going to need a lot more carbohydrates and proteins as well, but you're also just overall going to need a lot more fuel than a lot of people realize. When you're actually hiking mountains all day long, you need
Yeah.
a surprising amount of fuel to really continue to operate optimally.
Yeah, well, yeah, you just answered it. That's kind of what I was thinking about, right? I'm like, okay, how comparative is the training to the being on the mountain, right? Like I'm if I picture I'm hiking 8 to 10 miles a day up and down the mountain with a 50-pound pack, like and here's really why, right? I get it all the time, even from clients. They're like, well, what do you pack, when you're going out? And I'm like, I don't know if you're gonna want to eat what I eat, or
Right.
like here's my 2 pounds of food in my pack, but like macros wise, like I don't know if it's going to be the right thing for you. Like you can follow it.
Right. It's not gonna look the same for everybody.
Right. So with yours, like, are you doing one-on-one stuff with clients too, or are you doing it more on like the master class level where people are learning?
Where when I was coaching, it was all one on one. It was very
Okay.
customized, very individualized for each person. But the master class just gives an overview of how to find what you need for yourself and then how to understand what that is, how to understand where to find clean protein sources, where to find good, clean carbohydrates, how to adjust those things based off of what phase you're in. And when you go hunting, what kinds of foods are good for packing along on a hunt to be able to meet those nutritional needs. So I break it down so that people can build their own program basically with the knowledge that they have, but it's obviously going to be different for everybody still. It's not a one size fits all thing.
Right. Which makes sense why you're kind of making it where they figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for viewers and listeners, what we're chatting about here is Lindsay's got a masterclass built on fitness, nutrition, and like backcountry prep. So we're talking about that because, well, that's what intrigued me of this conversation in particular is because of the detail to it. Because I think this is something that's really needed for a lot of folks. So what would you say? This is more of like tossing one at you here, but what would you say are like three big misconceptions that hunters have about their backcountry nutrition?
Well, just basically the fact that it does matter.
Okay, all right, that's one.
It does make a difference. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, "Oh, you just need to be mentally tough," and yeah, you can just grit your way through the trip, but it will make a difference if you actually bring along what you need and you eat to support your body. You're going to feel better. You're going to perform better. You can just mentally tough your way through anything, but if you really want to thrive out there, you can if you bring the nutritional things you need with you. Another one is, like I mentioned before, how much you actually need. A lot of people will way underfuel themselves during really strenuous activity like a mountain elk hunt for multiple days on end. And then just the macros themselves, understanding that balance of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and the importance of both of them and how to combine them in a way that's going to maximize their benefit for you.
Hmm. What about this is something I've changed this over the years, but recovery or like at night, right? As far as like the nutrition that you're taking at night, I can't say I always did this because I would say carbohydrate intake has always been like a big factor for like, when I'm really physical. But at night, I tend to have more protein. Like I just like pound the protein at night. Is that something that you would say is similar or different as far as like your thought process behind like the protein intake and when to have it?
I would say the most important factor is getting it in for the day.
Mm-hmm.
hitting those protein goals, they can be one of the harder things for people to hit, especially if you're trying to do clean eating. It's a lot of meat. It's just
Yeah.
straight facts.
Yeah.
But for me, what I generally recommend for people is to try to spread out their goals fairly evenly throughout the day. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but say I'm, a female and I'm aiming for 150 grams of protein a day. I'm going to try to get around 50 in my breakfast, 50 in my lunch, 50 in my dinner, and I'll probably have a little bit of the offset in snacks. It's not going to be perfect, but I try to spread that out, spread my carbohydrates out, my fats out throughout the day because it's going to give me the most steady energy and it's going to make me feel the best. And then I'm not packing a ton of food into my body right before I'm supposed to go to sleep. It can
Mm-hmm.
impact the way that your quality of sleep is, and sleep is also really important. So
It's
that's
true.
things I say. But if you're at the end of the day and you haven't got all your protein in, by all means, eat your protein.
That's exactly what ends up happening because I'm like chewing on jerky and whatever kind of beef stick bars, you name it, because otherwise I feel like everything I take in, this is actually for the most part, right? If you go look at like the backpacking foods, it's all nut based. There's a lot of nut butters, right? It's all high fat content.
A lot of fat sources with a little protein thrown in.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, how do you get it? You actually intrigued me. I was going to ask you, what are you doing to get 50 grams of protein in breakfast?
I am a protein fan. I do a lot of different things. So one of my best kept secrets is I make homemade elk bone broth, and
Okay.
broth actually has a pretty high protein content. And I will drink a mug of bone broth to as like an additional protein part of my breakfast. But the way I put my meals together is I put my protein in first. So I build my meals based around my protein. So I pick my protein source. For breakfast, it might be egg whites, bone broth, and some Greek yogurt, something
Mm,
like and then I'll add in my carbohydrates and my fats around it because a lot of times they're going to be complements to my protein source. So it makes it easier if I try to get that protein first and then add my other components in. I eat a lot of wild game. We eat a lot of elk. I make my own deer jerky, bear jerky, elk jerky. That is a huge resource for me. If I'm reaching for a snack during the day, I'm going to be eating jerky. And the way I do it is so simple. It's just pure meat and salt dried. So it's basically pure proteins, very lean meat, unless it's
mm-hmm.
bear jerky. But yeah, I can get a good 100. I usually am aiming, generally for me, if I'm just in maintenance mode, I'm aiming for around 160 grams of protein per day.
That's not far from me. I'm at like 190, and there's days that it's tough. I feel like I'm just constantly eating. So when I'm on the mountain, it's tough. And breakfast is the hardest one all the time.
I use a lot of things like I use a lot of dairy to help me get my protein in breakfast. So it'll be things like Greek yogurt or egg whites, or I'll do cottage cheese, and then that bone broth as a side thing just helps me a ton to get that protein in during the day.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm like resorting to like either powdered protein
Hmm.
or I mean, if I'm not doing backcountry, I'm literally going to be bringing like actual ready to drink protein shakes and I just pound them in the tent.
Well, I mean, those Premier Protein, is it Premier Protein?
Yeah.
What is it? It's like 48 grams in one shake.
Oh,
Like,
core power.
yeah,
Yeah.
those, you gotta get your whole breakfast allotment in one of those. But
Yeah, but they don't keep you full.
with my Hashimoto's, I have to be really careful with where I get my food, which makes it even harder. Like I have to pretty much eat whole foods. My body
Yeah.
does not handle like whey protein supplements and shakes and things like that. And a lot of people can do that and it's great and that helps a lot because then you have more options. But I have to do pretty much whole food sources to get my macros in, and I've gotten really good at it because I've done it for so long that I know the things I need to use. I use a lot of peas. They're like
Okay.
I'll do a protein source for dinner. So I'll do like a 6 ounces of venison steak. And then if I add a good cup of peas on the side, you get your fiber, plus you get a whole nother extra dose of protein with those peas, or beans are another good one too.
Mm-hmm.
So I pick a main protein source, and then with the remaining protein I need, I fill it in with my sides as best I can. Pick high protein sides, and then add my carbs and fats on top.
It's awesome. Yeah, I like how you said that. You surround it around the protein. I don't think a lot of folks would even ever consider that. I just think of protein all the time, so I think it's a little bit different. But if you're actually thinking about a meal, that's a really good concept of thought process there.
It works well for me.
Yeah. Did you take gluten out? This is more just curiosity. Did you take gluten out for Hashimoto's or no?
I did, but I've actually added it back in, but only in the form of my own homemade, fermented sourdough bread.
Mm.
Fermentation process in the sourdough seems to take care of the issues that I have with gluten. So I can eat that, and I eat a lot of it.
Well, that goes back to like all the processed breads and stuff are just not the same as somebody making their own stuff.
Yeah, and I can make 4 loaves at a time. I'm pretty blessed with the setup I got for myself. So I can make 4 loaves at a time. I'll bake for maybe 3 days and have 12 loaves in the freezer, and I'm
It's
good for a
awesome.
few weeks.
I know, and I saw you doing your jerky thing when you had that like hind quarter up, and I was like, she's guaranteed doing jerky. I don't know what else you'd be doing with that.
Up us making my son got his first deer last year, and we threw a couple whole quarters in the freezer because I wanted to make jerky, and my winter was just nuts busy. So this spring I was like, okay, it's jerky time.
That's awesome. Okay. What about hydration? So that's a whole nother concept, right? And I keep seeing more and more stuff. I think every company now has come out with some kind of electrolyte product. Any feelings there as far as like what you enjoy or things that you've seen actually like really benefit folks?
I use a lot of the electrolyte packets when I'm hiking because they're super easy. I was actually just researching electrolyte packets that don't have a lot of the additives in them. I don't do well with artificial sweeteners. I also don't want a ton of sugar in them. And I've noticed that there are a few on the market, but I haven't tried them. I'm curious to try them. But using things like Liquid IV, Wilderness Athlete has some that I've used. There's another one that I've used. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but
I feel
I
like
highly
LMNT is the popular one now that I keep seeing.
I don't think I've tried it. They do have an unflavored, unsweetened one that I've thought about trying. I was looking at it yesterday,
Mm.
but I highly recommend them. When you're out there, they can make a huge difference for just muscle cramping, with energy, just how you feel overall. Staying hydrated is huge, and having those electrolytes balanced is important for optimal function for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience of the cramping. It sucks, and then you just sit there and you're pounding stuff for an hour just trying to catch up. So it's not fun.
Not worth it to get behind on that.
You just don't realize how fast it hits you. Like I remember I was in Montana. I was on a bear hunt. I don't know. We hiked for a couple hours, and I started getting dehydrated, but it hit kind of unexpectedly where I was drinking the whole time, and then all of a sudden I'm like 2 liters out, like my bladder is just completely dry, and then I just started cramping up immediately, and I was like, oh my god, all I got is like 5 salt tabs in my pocket, and then I was actually pretty crushed that day. It took me like a whole day to recover.
I got dehydrated one day on alone. It was difficult to stay hydrated there with no cup or anything to hold water. And I got dehydrated one day. I had the worst headache of my life and just had to spend the whole day focused on drinking water. Like that was what I did to get myself back.
It's interesting you bring that up. I thought about that. I thought about that when I was watching it because that Alone series, not to go too far back to Alone, but I felt like it was like hyper fast. Yeah, like it wasn't, like a typical series is like you're watching everybody build their stuff and doing all these things, and it was like, okay, like a 3 day span almost like disappears.
Yeah. Yeah, there was
And
left out trying to fit it all because they did this 6 different groups and it was a 6-part series. So each group only had one episode. And so they had to fit 30 days of material into about 40 minutes. And so there was a lot left
yeah,
out.
and were you self filming that or no?
It was a combination. I did a lot of self filming. They also had trail cameras set up that did a lot of
Mm,
filming. And then they had film crews that would come out periodically and get specific shots that they needed. They would do drones, and then they would do interviews through periodically throughout the time. So they'd set up cameras and talk to you about what you were doing just to get B roll.
got it. That's so interesting. Yeah, to see it kind of a deal. Because I always wonder about, when folks are videoing themselves all the time, I'm like, how many batteries do these guys have? It's like, I mean, are they constantly swapping batteries?
It's cold. Yeah, the battery life is not very good. And you have to deal with the battery life on your mic and the battery life on your camera because you are not allowed to let your mic die. So you have to keep that going. If you
God,
let that
that's
go out, you're going to be hearing it.
a whole nother, yeah. Hey, try to survive and be videographer. Love it. I love it. All right. So I had a couple other questions here for you, but as far as like your own hunts, right? Like what's been one of the like toughest hunts that you've personally done that you've taken a lot away from?
My mountain goat hunt, it was physically just the most taxing hunt because we did it in such a short time span.
Okay.
It was so far and so much elevation change. So we went out the night before opener. We got there in the afternoon and started hiking and hiked all the way up. It was, I believe it was about 6,000 feet of elevation change, miles back in, set up our base camp just before dark so that we could glass, so that we kind of knew if there was anything around we wanted to try to look for in the morning. Spotted a couple different goats, went to bed, got up with daybreak, spotted more of the goats again, some of the ones we had seen from the night before, but other goats as well. Found one that was pretty interesting looking, and so we started working our way to that one and got to it by like 8 o'clock in the morning. Ended up dumping him, getting him worked up, got all that packed up, back to camp, packed camp up, and then packed all the way back out. And it was only about a 30-hour round trip
Jesus.
for the in, the pack the goat to the camp, the pack the camp up, and pack everything back out. So, and the packs were heavy, and it was real steep country. So my body was feeling it on that one.
What state did you do that in?
Montana.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Literally, I'm sitting there going like, I don't know if that's like feasible in Alaska, like a 30-hour trek like that.
Yeah, probably not. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's awesome.
It was in the Gallatin range over here. It was
Yeah.
I drew that tag and it was pretty exciting. And I did prep a lot for it, thank goodness. I spent a lot of time rucking. We did a lot of scouting, and so I was physically prepared for it, but it was still an arduous journey.
Yeah. That the mountain range is no joke. So that's impressive. That's awesome.
It was fun.
How long ago was that?
Couple year 3 years now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's sweet. That's on the bucket list one of these days.
And for a long time I felt pretty lucky to draw it because it was like 1% draw odds or something.
Yeah.
So I was pretty stoked
Always.
when I got it. I was like, yay. Great. Haven't drawn anything since, but you know.
Yeah, so well, that was gonna be my next question. Was obviously you hit something good like this. Do you have like your go-to hunts that you do every year? Kind of because you live in a really good place for it.
Yeah. Yeah, we hunt elk and deer every year. I always have a cougar tag and a bear tag and wolf tags. So all the basic over-the-counter stuff that we can get, I always hunt. But then I put in for some different elk units, and I put in for sheep, goat, bison, and moose every year. I can't put in for goat now for another 5 years or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But we put in for those every year. My husband drew a moose tag over here a few years back and killed a beautiful moose. Um, so we've been lucky with draws, but we
It's
put in every
awesome.
so.
Do you apply to other states too, like out of state?
I don't. My husband hunts a little bit in Idaho. He's a veteran, and they have a
Okay.
pretty nice setup for them over there for hunting out of state. So he does
Yeah.
some Idaho hunting, but I don't really put in for out of state. I used to hunt whitetails in Illinois every year, but I
Oh,
haven't done it for a few years. That was always fun, but that was over the counter. I could get those pretty
yeah.
easily.
I feel like even if you apply for those in Illinois, a lot of times they're generally pretty easy to apply.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So as far as like your go-to gear, do you have like just some favorite gear that you have like just fell in love with over the years on some of these long treks? And then I guess we'll throw in there, but your go-to snacks. So we'll throw in both of those.
Okay. Um, yeah, I use a Stone Glacier pack. I like it so much, and the frame fits me so well that I ended up buying a frame just for rucking.
Okay.
So I use the same backpack frame as my hunting pack as for my rucks, and it's taken really good care of my back, and it's done really well under load. And then I use trekking poles. Trekking poles save you. I used to think these are dumb. These are for old people, and I'm not old, so I'm not using them. And I will be the first person to say I was dead wrong. Like, they are not for old people, they are for smart people, and they save your knees. I can hike faster with trekking poles if I use them. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone cross country skiing, but you can get into a rhythm with your skis where your arms are actually helping you with momentum, and
Uh,
it increase your pace substantially while also making it easier on you. It's less difficult, it's less fatiguing. So, big fan of trekking poles. I love my Trek boots. I wear them everywhere I go. And what else do I really enjoy out there? I'd say my pack is always with me. My pistol, Smith& Wesson Ultralight, that's always with me.
Okay.
Nice handy piece of gear.
I like it.
And then
Yeah.
my favorite snacks are, I mean, I'm on my goat hunt. I took an entire loaf of sourdough bread, stuffed it in my pack. I took a bunch of jerky, stuffed that in my pack, and then I had a little like vial of olive oil and then everything bagel seasoning, and that's what my food was. And it was bomb.
Everything bagel seasoning. That's what I heard as the key right there, actually.
I would just rip a hunk of the sourdough off and sprinkle it with olive oil or
Oh
drizzle
my
it with
God.
olive oil and then put the seasoning on there and I pound that and it was excellent carbohydrates plus the olive oil. It's good for your joints. And then I would eat jerky and that was my protein and it was salty. So that added for some salt for me and it was great. I felt awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. I can agree on the everything bagel stuff.
It's good.
My wife in particular does the same thing. She does sourdough with the avocado, like the whole like avocado toast, and then she's yeah.
My kids
Yeah,
love it.
it's awesome. Okay, a little extra there. That was good. All right, so you got your master class. How did you piece the master class together in your own like mind of like order?
Well, the best way I can explain that is I look at it as like a three-part. It was like a three-part and a three-part. So you've got your three aspects you're dealing with. You're dealing with lifestyle, you're dealing with fitness, and you're dealing with nutrition. So those three aspects, but then there's three phases of it. There's your everyday life, because if you're living like a pig in a pig pen and then all of a sudden you're going to dial in your nutrition for a hunt, you're just not going to get the same results. So your everyday lifestyle and your everyday habits are really important. And so I taught a lot on just how to treat yourself on the day to day and how to make these things kind of a lifestyle versus just I'm prepping for a hunt, so I'm going to try to take care of myself now. And then there's the actual prep phase where you're getting your body ready for the hunt. And then there's the actual I'm on a hunt phase. So I had three factors in three phases, basically.
That's cool. Okay. I like it. That's pretty simple actually in concept.
I'm simple minded, so I have to
Yeah.
keep it simple for myself.
Well, I think that actually says a lot. I like simplicity myself because it's not overwhelming to you when you're building something out, but I think it connects to folks a lot better too, right? If you
Yeah,
overcomplicate it.
it has to be sustainable. It has to be something that people can actually implement with busy lives and a lot going on. That's, I learned how to do that in coaching people individually. You really start to see what works well for people, what doesn't generally work well for people, what they can sustain, how to implement these things kind of slowly and methodically so they become more habitual before you start adding in some of the more difficult things. And that aspect of it, I tried to build that into the course as being, you take on a few of the really important things and you get those solid and then you build from there. And if you take enough time, you can do that. It doesn't need to be this like quick fix stuff. It never lasts. It's never sustainable. And people might get results for a little bit and then they're off the wagon because
Mm-hmm.
the wagon wasn't designed for a long-term journey. It's just a short-term stint and that doesn't work.
I love it. You gotta build the wagon for the Oregon Trail, huh?
That's right. Where's the river with it when you get to the end?
I love it. So somebody said something the other day. It was like it's like somebody had, I don't know. It was a joke about like they had measles or dysentery or something like that, and I immediately was like, dude, you just like you totally just brought me back to the Oregon Trail of like I'm shooting bison with my with my muzzle loader.
We're all standing around the little grave in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. That's so funny. I think like everybody grew up on that and like at least my age range.
Yeah, in our group, it was a fun game. I miss it.
Oh, that's funny. I love it. All right, so with that, I feel like you're working on something else now, right? Like you want to can you bring that up or is it like kind of quiet?
Oh, well, I always have a ton of irons in the fire. I have to be careful because I have a tendency to just stick them all in, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, I can't do it all.
Yeah, okay, fair.
I do the retreats, and that's something I look forward to every year. So I teach in Alaska. for a week. We take women out in the bush. We fly in and teach them backcountry skills, survival skills, fly fishing, and a bunch of things. And then we do the Wild Women's Rendezvous in Idaho in June, and that's a huge event where we teach women everything they need to know related to hunting. We actually take them on elk hunts. We are going to be taking them on bison hunts this year. We teach them hide care, we teach them tanning, we teach trapping, we teach archery, rifle, pistol, everything you can think of related to hunting is taught in this week-long event. And then I teach with my friend Chelsea Hansler out of Ontario. I go to her place up there near Algonquin National Park, and we do a canoe trip for women for a week in the summer. And then I'm also going to be helping Carrie Lee Knoke with her women's event in June. I'm going to be teaching her self-defense skills there. And then I'm also helping with a bear hunt for women here over in Idaho this fall in October. And then I write for a magazine called Western Hunter Magazine.
Yeah. Saw that.
That keeps me a little bit preoccupied, but I enjoy it. And then I'm starting a new thing with my friend Chelsea from Ontario. Her and I are two peas in a pod. She lives off grid. She's a houndswoman. She hunts, she traps, she just does it all, but she does it all off grid, which is really cool. She's just a fascinating person, very down to earth, very easy to talk to. And her and I, when we get together, it's not pretty, but it's entertaining. We have a really fun time together.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
We're not ones you want to set loose in the wild unsupervised. So we decided that we should do something together professionally because we're such a fun pair. So we're going to start a Patreon where we teach. She's going to be teaching a lot of stuff from her off-grid lifestyle. I'm going to be teaching a lot of the things that I do, and we're going to share our world with other people and just build it as a community where we can get together, we can talk, we can answer questions, we can bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of valuable information to people, but also just have a fun community of people that love a lot of the same things. So
it's awesome.
We're going to be releasing that May 12th. We're going to start it. We've already been preloading it with a bunch of fun stuff, and we're just kind of excited to get in there as friends and bring people along for all of our shenanigans.
No, it sounds it's kind of, that was kind of the vibe I got off of social media. Was like, okay, these two seem like they're just a lot of fun. So they're doing something that's going to be really, really funny.
We're really doing it for us because we live far apart from each other, and we're like, we need to be hanging out together regularly. And if this is the way we got to do it, we might as well bring other people along for the fun. And we both love to teach, and Instagram a lot of times just feels like you're screaming into the void. But I feel like with a group like that wants to learn, they're invested in it, they're interested in it, it brings back the passion of teaching and showing people things, and it makes you excited to show up for it. And so both her and I were like, I'd rather put our time and energy into a small group of people that we know really want to learn and are invested in this and get to know them and help them with their own interests and their own journey rather than just continue to scream into the void. So
yeah,
we're our heart on it.
Instagram is interesting. I feel like it's if you think about where that came from, where like people looked at a picture and it was like,
yeah,
and now it's like you can't go one scroll without, like, every single one is almost like an ad.
Oh yes, it's also curated.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm a curated human, so I'd rather get real and raw and authentic with a small group of people. And the neat thing about Patreon is we don't have to filter ourselves. Like Instagram, you got to be so careful. You can't just put up information about butchering and put pictures of animals and videos of you working through things. You could end up with your page getting shut down.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
On Patreon, we can put whatever we want in there. So we're like, this would be a way better place for us to invest time. I'll still be on Instagram. I'll still share things, but I just want to be passionate again about what I'm putting out there and put things out that I feel are offering value and people are really interested in. And I think that this is a great opportunity to do that. So
well, it's similar to like, folks putting videos of hunts on YouTube because they don't have to follow a specific cadence of these are all the things you got to do for TV, Yeah. So kind of similar.
It cuts out the rules.
Yeah, I've never used that. Is that like, so can you pre-record and upload stuff into it, or are you always doing it live?
No, okay. You can do, it's very versatile. So I have courses and things that I've been working on that I'm going to release in there as a series, so that people will have a series they can go through. She's working on a hide tanning series for in there so that people can go through that. But you can also go on live. It has tons of resources and ways that you can utilize it. You can connect your YouTube channel to it. You can do pretty much anything you want in there. It's really a great platform for what we want to do. It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I've looked at other community stuff, so that's interesting. That's why it's intriguing based on what you're saying. So
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to just bonding with those people and really getting to know each other and just having fun in there. It's really a lot about learning, but a lot about just shenanigans and having fun.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
gonna be
that's the passion of what you do.
yeah, got to keep it fun.
So how do folks find out about not just this Patreon thing you got going on, but even with your other stuff that, I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on. So how do folks like find this?
The stuff that I have, my master classes, the retreats that I'm a part of, a lot of that stuff is linked on my Instagram profile, so you can find a lot of those things there. And you can find me most places as Hunt Fiber. I have a website that I'm not super active on there, but I do post things on there occasionally. It's huntfiber.com, and I'm on Facebook. But for links, my Instagram profile is going to be the best place to find those.
Okay.
So you can find a lot of the stuff through Grenda's Getaways. That's where both the Wild Women's Rendezvous in Idaho and the Alaska retreat are out of there. Whiskey Creek Retreats is the Ontario retreat.
Okay. Grenda's Getaways. Okay.
Yeah, they do Cabo marlin fishing trips. Those are also a blast.
It's pretty sweet.
Oh man, it was so much fun.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'll have to link all that in the show notes. So if folks have questions about it, but that's pretty awesome.
That's fun. I'm blessed. I've been very blessed to be able to do things that I really enjoy doing.
Awesome. Okay. All right, folks. Well, you heard it. She's got a lot of really cool things going on. So check out the show notes. I will add everything in there. And if you got questions, reach out to Lindsay. She is a open book and ready to engage, as you can hear.
I am.
With that added, so she's got her masterclass on 360 Sportsman.
I actually have two on there. I have wilderness survival and hunt prep.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and in your wilderness survival was first, right?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did that this winter. It was
Okay.
fun.
Yeah, I can't keep track anymore. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
And a lot more coming. It's going to be awesome.
Totally. Totally. Give that a look. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. So, if you all have questions, please let her know. But yeah, a lot of great resource in there. And then I'll just add, if you guys have any questions about tag applications, hunt planning, anything of that nature, reach out, check out the website, that east2westhunts.com. Same thing on my Instagram. And well, that's it. We're going to cap this one. Just remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. We'll see you on the next one.